My name is Mike Iscovitz. I'm the Chief Meteorologist at Fox 26 in Houston, Texas, and I'm here to bust 10 weather myths. I have a degree in meteorology, and I've been a TV broadcaster and meteorologist for 26 years. And so I've come across some pretty good myths over the years, and I thought that I would address some of them. By the way, this 10 is just the first 10 of probably 100 that I'm going to try and tackle here for you. Myth number 1. This one's an easy, innocuous one. The myth is a high rain chance means heavy rain and a low rain chance means light rain. And that is not the way we use it. I think most of the time people expect that if there's an 80% rain chance, it means it's going to rain like crazy. And if there's a 20% rain chance, it means we're probably going to have light rain. The way it works, though, is this. Where you are, if you're in the viewing area, or if you were to pick any point in the viewing area, an 80% rain chance means there's an 8 out of 10 likelihood that you would measure rain in that spot. Doesn't say if the rain is going to be heavy or not, which is why it's important that you listen to the weather forecasters' whole forecast, because they'll talk about, hopefully if they're doing their job, they'll talk about how much rain you're going to get, if there's a chance for severe weather. Something that happens along the Gulf Coast all the time is that in the summertime we'll have a sea breeze that comes in. You'll have some pop-up thunderstorms, maybe only pockets of 1 or 2. But it could drop 2 inches of rain, and there might only be 1 of those. And so on that kind of day, you'd have a 20% rain chance. And really, most locations didn't get rain, but if you get caught under one of those downpours, you can get very heavy rain, lots of lightning, all on a 20% kind of day. So just keep that in mind. You could also have a 100% chance of rain that's just going to be drizzle coming in. I'm sure you all have experienced that. If you live, let's say, in Seattle, and it just rains steadily all day, that's your 100% rain chance, even though it doesn't accumulate very much. So that's myth number 1. This is one of my favorites. Myth number 2, heat lightning. Have you heard of that? Heat lightning happens on hot nights when the lightning does not make any sound. There's no thunder. We call that heat lightning. I used to hear about that when I was a kid. Well, it's not true. That's a myth. So what you're seeing at night is a distant thunderstorm. Now the sound can only travel so many miles, but at night when the sky is dark, you can see lightning from a thunderstorm probably 30, 40, or 50 miles away. Or if it's a very large storm, maybe farther than that. And so imagine that there's a storm that's 30 miles away from you, and you're going to see that flash of lightning at night, but the thunder, it will not make it all the way to you because the storm is just too far away and the sound is not able to travel that far. But you best be assured that if you're near that thunderstorm, folks there will be hearing that thunder big time. And of course, the thunder comes from the rapid heating of the air that causes a rapid expansion, and it really is very, very similar to what you would get if a bomb explodes. You know, you figure a bomb explodes, you know, it causes this shock wave of expansion. It's a very similar kind of concept with lightning, where you have really a pencil-thin channel of electricity that's being cut through the air that heats up to hotter than the surface of the sun. Suddenly heats up that air, which expands and creates this shock wave that we hear as thunder. That can travel several miles, but it's not going to be able to travel 10, 20, or 30 miles or longer than that. And so that's why on those hot summer nights, you can get what some people refer to as heat lightning. So I hope, you know, maybe that's something you've heard of and now you know. All right, this one is very important actually. Myth number 3, tornadoes don't hit big cities. I've actually heard this one a lot. And, you know, people say, well, tornadoes always hit out in the country, or they always hit, we know this, right, mobile home parks or something like that. Or they always hit out in rural towns, right? Well, think about it this way, okay? If you were to look at a map of the United States, cities are dots, right? And most of the country really is empty land or farmland, all right? So if you were going to have, let's say, where I am in the state of Texas, you're going to take the whole state of Texas and take cities, like you have the Houston metropolitan area, Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, and then in between you do have other cities like Waco, you have Amarillo and Lubbock, anyway, all these other cities. The vast majority of the time, if a tornado touches down, it's going to be in the middle of the panhandle where it's not hitting any town, or it might be west of Fort Worth where it's not hitting any town. So if you just think about the fact that tornadoes, just by definition, really are not super common. You know, you get maybe between 700 and 1,200 in the entire country per year. Okay, per year. You get, let's say, 1,000 per year. So they're not going to be hitting everywhere all at once. When they do hit, odds are, if you were to throw a dart at a map of the United States, you're not going to hit a city. You're probably going to hit some place that's in between cities. So that's why tornadoes seem to not hit cities. But tornadoes absolutely do hit cities. We had a tornado a little bit more than a year ago, right here in Houston. In fact, it hit the town of Pasadena, which is just off on the east side of Houston. It was an EF3. It was a tornado emergency. It was right over the city. We've had tornadoes over the city of Houston. There have been tornado emergencies in Dallas. There was a giant EF5 tornado that destroyed Moore, Oklahoma, which is near Oklahoma City. You know, just barely missed, but it hit that town. There was a Nashville tornado. In fact, there might have been two, but Nashville has been hit by tornadoes. There also was a Miami tornado. I remember that one that formed, and it was like going in the skyscrapers, like in between the skyscrapers downtown. So tornadoes can and do hit cities, and there's nothing special about a city that would deflect a tornado. Myth number 4. This one is controversial. If you see a tornado, exit your car and take shelter under an overpass. Now, you've probably seen this in movies. It was even in the movie Twisters, because back, decades ago, the belief was that you wanted to get out of your car and you drive to an overpass and you climb up, right? And you kind of get in that little space. But over the years, what's been sort of figured out and discovered is that really that's not a safe thing to do. First of all, you're probably going to hurt yourself even climbing up there if you think about it. Secondly, if you do climb up there safely, you are now in an area where the wind is going to get channeled through even faster, right? Because it's just like if you've ever been in a downtown area and it's on a windy day, when you are standing in between the buildings, the wind actually gets accelerated. So if the tornado moves over your area, you're probably in more danger being in that little space in the underpass or overpass than you would be if you were someplace lower. So this is the standard advice. If you are on the road and if you see a tornado, if the tornado is sufficiently far away, okay, you can try to drive to the safest safe building you can get to. That is the best advice that I can give anybody. If you're near any area that has buildings, you can get to the grocery store or get to, a gas station, even a convenience store, something like that, that's going to be your best bet. I would say it's up to you if you're in the absolute middle of nowhere, which most of you will not be. But if you're absolutely in the middle of nowhere and you're in your car and there's a tornado and you're driving and you absolutely cannot escape it, then what you're supposed to do is get out of your car and get into a ditch or a low area and cover your head. I don't know. If you're asking me, I'd stay in the car. But sometimes you gotta make some tough decisions, but get to a building. All right, myth number 5. It's cold outside. So that means that climate change is a fake myth. Climate change is fake because it's cold outside. And I understand. If we're talking about global warming all the time, well, where's all the warming? Well, it is warming. And it's important to remember, though, that even if we're a part of a warming globe, the poles are still extremely cold. It is not warm at the South Pole. It's not warm at the North Pole. It's not warm in northern Canada. It's still extremely cold. And if anything, the scientists say, and I'm not a climate scientist, I did take climatology in college, obviously, and I understand the basics of what's called the general atmospheric circulation. But if you have warming at the poles, it actually is going to make for a wavier, less stable jet stream. And when you have a bumpier jet stream, it allows the opportunity for cold air to come down from the poles to be shifted. It's also important to remember that when it's cold here, like let's say it's in Texas and it's 20 degrees or it's 10 degrees and we're having some huge freeze like we had with snow this past winter, that cold air that moved away from the pole, something had to come take its place, warmer air. So you might displace that cold air from the poles, but it doesn't mean that now all of a sudden the planet is cold. It's just where you are is cold. There have been shifting air masses around the world and it's going to be unusually hot somewhere else. So we're still going to have cold winters. We're still going to have cold snaps. We'll still have freak snow events, you know, like we did around here in the Houston area this past winter, but it doesn't negate the science. And at this point, you know, I've learned a valuable lesson over the years too, and I recommend this to everybody. Sometimes you do have to trust the experts. You know, I'm not a doctor, and so I wouldn't give somebody advice on how to treat their liver. You know, I'm not a, you know, a horticulturist or whatever, so I'm not going to give somebody advice on how to grow corn. You know, so I wouldn't take just some random person's advice on the internet regarding, you know, what's happening to the atmosphere. You should trust the experts, and there are thousands of experts around the world who all agree that climate change is happening. So, and if you don't, let me just leave you with this one other thing, and then we'll move on from climate change, because I know y'all are probably getting mad at me, or some people are. Think about this, on the smallest of scales. Imagine you're in your bedroom and you're burning a fire. I think it's not that hard to understand that the room is going to very quickly become filled with unbreathable air, right? Smoke, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, soot, all of that stuff, right? It's very easy. Now, if you make that bigger and say, like, what if we were in a big building and started burning fires? Okay, that's probably still bad. Well, now, if you open it up to the whole world and you just multiply it by all of the industry that we have, everything that we've been burning, that's stored up carbon. So we're taking stuff that was in the ground from millions of years ago and pulling it out and releasing the carbon dioxide from that. That's why it's a big deal. So hope you can, you know, maybe think about that. Now, what do we do about it? That's another story. That we can have a discussion about. All right. Myth number 6, tape. This is going to make a lot of people probably more upset than the global warming thing, I promise you. Myth number 6, tape will protect your windows from a hurricane. Now, I grew up in South Florida where we had people, and I think people still do it here too, but here in the Texas area, but they would put an X on your window. You would get masking tape, right? And you would make a masking tape X on your window. And thinking that it's going to somehow reinforce the window or protect the window or keep shards of glass from flying or something like that. Look, you also have to trust the experts here. And just think about it logically. If there is a tree that falls on your house, or there's a flying projectile that comes through your window, having an X made of masking tape is not going to do anything. Zero. Okay, so at best, you're just going to be wasting your money on masking tape and wasting time that probably could have been spent, you know, better spent doing other things. At worst, you know, what's going to happen is it's going to give you a false sense of security, number one, and then it influences your neighbors to all do the same thing. So then everybody's got X's all over their windows. But anyway, it doesn't do anything. It just doesn't do anything. Plus, after the storm, if you don't take the tape down right away, it will like glue itself to your window and you'll never be able to get it off, and it's a major pain in the butt. So just make sure you have water, food, light, medicine, first aid kit, a way to charge your phone. Those are the things that you really need in a hurricane, not the masking tape. All right. Myth number 7, and this is one that's very common along the Gulf Coast and the Atlantic Coast, and I imagine if you're watching us from the Caribbean or Mexico or any of those spots, it's probably the same kind of deal. And the myth is, I was fine during Hurricane fill in the blank, so I'll just ride this one out. Hurricanes are like snowflakes, and like people. Each one is different. Now, they're all basically the same. Yes, they're an area of low pressure, and they produce high winds and heavy rain, and they move in from the warm water. Those are all the basics, yes. But each hurricane is unique in several ways. How big is it? How strong are the winds? How long of a fetch, like how many miles does it have to pull moisture in from the ocean or the Gulf that it's moving in from? What angle does it hit the coastline? How fast is it moving when it hits the coastline? How fast does it weaken when it heads inland? Okay, once it makes landfall, how fast does it go? What direction does it go? So, and there's probably 100 other variables, right? Like, has the land use around where you live changed in the last 30 years since the last storm you're comparing it to? And the reason I mention this is that there are a lot of folks who will remember a storm from 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or maybe their parents told them about it and they experienced it when they were a kid. And they say, well, when Hurricane Alicia hit, my house was totally fine, so I don't have to worry about this one. And it's just not that way. And I think a lot of people, it may be an old-fashioned way to think about it. I think maybe, you know, not everybody thinks that way, but I know a lot of people do. And I've heard it a lot through the years. So just something to think about. Comparing a current storm to a past storm can have disastrous consequences. So let's not do that. Each storm brings its own set of risks. Myth number 8. Here we go. Lines in the sky are chemicals from a nefarious conspiracy. Well, the lines that you see that are high up in the sky are a type of cirrus cloud. And they're a cirrus cloud that is man-made. It's a man-made cirrus cloud, but not from chemicals. It is made from jet aircraft. And we know this because you can see it happening. Sometimes you can actually see a jet high in the sky and you will see the condensation trail coming out of the back of it. In the process of burning jet fuel in the jet engine, the air is compressed and it's heated with jet fuel, kerosene, and it's ejected out the back of the jet to create thrust and to turn the fan and the turbine. There is water vapor that is in the product that comes out of the burning. Part of it is water vapor, which almost instantly, given the right conditions, forms into an ice crystal, which will leave a trail that is a cloud, and that cloud is called a condensation trail. Now, we can see these all over the world. Okay, you can see condensation trails in the Middle East. You can see condensation trails in Canada. You can see condensation trails over the Pacific Ocean. I mean, wherever you go, we can actually use satellites to see these condensation trails, and just being on the ground, you could look up and see the contrails. So in order to convince yourself that they are chemicals, you have to think, first of all, they're poisoning us with chemicals that are not invisible. It'd be a lot easier to do it if the chemicals were invisible. Secondly, they're spraying us from 6 miles high in the atmosphere where it's not even going to reach the ground, so I don't know what their purpose is. It'd be better for them to spray us on the ground. And you'd also have to believe that every pilot, every refueling person, every baggage loader, every airline around the world, regardless of countries, including North Korea, Iran, and everywhere else, is all in on it. And it just doesn't make any sense. So again, you got to trust the experts on that, and don't listen to just you know, some guy. All right, so this one's more fun. Myth number 9. You can stand up eggs or brooms on the equinox or solstice or during some planetary alignment, etc. It comes up every year, at least 4 times a year, that people are balancing eggs because it's the equinox or something like that. There's nothing special that happens with gravity at all on the equinox. The only thing that happens on the equinox is that the sun shines directly on the equator, and so everybody gets 12 hours of sunlight. Now, think about it. I could understand maybe trying to stand up an egg if you were on the equator, but if you're anywhere else, the egg would be pulled sideways anyway. So if you're talking about the sun having some kind of gravitational effect. So it is, you know, standing up eggs is sometimes a fun thing to do, maybe as a classroom sort of experiment with kids, but you would be sort of misinforming them, miseducating them if you told them that it's some gravity that's coming from either the sun or the moon. The moon does affect our tides. The moon pulls on the earth just as much as the earth pulls on the moon. And since the earth is surrounded by water, the water will get pulled differently, which is what causes this bulge in the tides. So yes, that happens, but it's not going to pull an egg up any more than if it stands an egg up, it would stand you up. You know what I mean? You would feel yourself getting pulled. So anyway, if you want to try to stand up a broom, that's fine, but just, you know, be careful. All right, the final myth for the day today is myth number 10, and this is one of my favorites, everybody. Water spins down the toilet counterclockwise due to the Coriolis force. Now this, I will tell you that this was even a myth in meteorology. When I was in my major in college, there were, in fact, I have a good friend who is a brilliant guy who has a master's degree now. I'm sure he knows now, but back then he thought that the water goes down the sink and the water goes down the toilet because of the Coriolis force. And there was a physics teaching assistant that got into a whole debate with me where he was trying to explain to me how it does go down because of the Coriolis force. Here's how I can prove to you that it doesn't. What is the Coriolis force? Coriolis force derives from the fact that the Earth spins, right? And so anything traveling on the Earth will be affected by that spin. Keeping it really simple. How fast does the Earth spin? Once per day. Okay, so think about the Earth spins once per day. That is the maximum amount of Coriolis force. One rotation per day. Okay, now hurricanes are different because you're getting them kind of coming together like that, and you think, okay, maybe a toilet is like a hurricane. It isn't. If you, next time you flush the toilet, be careful, you'll see that the jets that are shooting the water out of the top of the toilet direct it down the toilet. And that it does not rely on any spinning coming from the Earth to do that. It's not strong enough to do that. If you're talking about something on the scale of a hurricane or a huge low pressure system that's bringing cold fronts and things like that, or even ocean, systems like the Bermuda High or things like that, yes, then the Coriolis force counts. But in your sink, in your bath plug, in your toilet, let's just leave Mr. Coriolis out of it. He didn't do anything. He's not helping with this one either. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Hope I didn't get too controversial with the chemtrail things. Don't get mad at me. If anything, just comment on the video. I like that. Comment on the video. Try to give it a thumbs up. If not, then thank you for watching. Join us on Fox Local. You can download Fox Local. That's our app for your smart TV or phone. Fox Local is the way to watch us for free. And not just me. Any Fox-owned station from coast to coast. You want to watch the news in LA? Free. You want to watch the news in New York City? Free. You want to watch it in Milwaukee? Free. On Fox Local. All right, that'll do it for this week's segment with me, Mike Iscovitz. Hope you have a great day.